Hello everyone, this is Patrick Hickey from Boherbue Comprehensive School, and this is my latest video on cultural identity on the island of Ireland. In the first one, we looked at cultural identity in terms of language, the Irish language, education. Um, After that, we looked at the Eucharistic Congress, and in this video now, I'm going to look at the development of cultural identity in the North. Now, you would use the following if you're asked to compare culture and identity north and south. Now, if you look at the exam papers, questions on the Eucharistic Congress and cultural identity are extremely popular. It comes up a lot. However, this is an aspect, speaking as I am now in 2020, that has not come up in nearly 10 years. This whole idea of looking at and comparing cultural identity north and south. Now, a lot of people, when they look at a question like this, they kind of panic. They might say, oh, geez, I know about cultural identity in the South, the promotion of the Irish language, the way the education system was used, the preference for the Catholic religion, the role of the Eucharistic Congress and all of that, and the duopoly of power between church and state that existed. And then they see the North is added into the question and they go, I haven't it covered. And I suppose the whole point of this video is to deal with that problem. Now, other people will look at this kind of question, north and south, and they'll say to themselves, oh, I have to do it 50-50. Half my essay has to be on the south, half on the north. I don't have the material for that. That is not the case. For these kinds of questions where there are two aspects, have a look at the following. For any question on the higher level paper where there are two aspects, so they might ask you to look at two things. Um, you don't have to do it 50-50 to succeed in the OE. You can quite easily base 3/4 of your essay on one aspect. Say, in this example, you could do 3/4 of your essay on cultural identity in the South and incorporate the Eucharistic Congress. We all know you'll have lots to say there. And just the last quarter on cultural identity in the North. If you do that, you're covered, right? It doesn't have to be 50-50. I can't state that enough. It's I suppose the worst thing you can do is to totally ignore the second aspect if it is required. Like if you write the whole essay on the South and the Eucharistic Congress, you will be punished in the OE, in the overall evaluation. Anyway, you don't have to worry about that once you watch this video, because now I'm going to take you through cultural identity in Northern Ireland. All right, so let's begin. Now, I suppose the cultural identity that was promoted by the Northern government was best summed up by its first Prime Minister, James Craig, when he said, I want to create a Protestant state for a Protestant nation. We have a very, very different situation to what was going on in the Free State at the time. When W.T. Cosgrave became president of the Executive Council, he went out of his way to actually bring in Protestants into the Free State government. For example, Ernest Blythe, who we talked about before when it came to Ireland's finances or the Free State's finances, was a Presbyterian. We also saw how Cosgrave handpicked 24 Protestants, including W.B. Yeats, to be senators in the Irish Senate. That is far from the case in Northern Ireland, because we see here, or we saw there, Craig made no effort whatsoever to involve Catholics in the Northern government. Northern Ireland would become a de facto one-party state, and the party always in power would be the Ulster Unionist Party. For 50 years, as long as Stormont existed, nationalists were left out of government through the use of gerrymandering and the abolishment of the PR system of voting. Now, a large part of the Unionist Party's electoral success was how it could successfully redirect attention away from the North's many social and economic problems. Now, any of you that have studied Northern Ireland during this period and you've looked at, I suppose, society and economy in Northern Ireland will be well aware of the problems I'm alluding to, including an appalling health system, high unemployment, a lack of housing, all that kind of thing. But It still didn't stop the Unionist Party winning comfortable majorities in every single election for 50 years while Stormont existed. Because a lot of the time, like as soon as an election was declared, uh, the Unionist Party would scare Northern Unionists, even the poorest ones, by the enemy within, the Catholic minority that lived in Northern Ireland, and the outside enemy, the Catholic dominated South. Demonstration against Roman Catholics became widespread in unemployment, council houses, provision of healthcare and education. Promoting separateness and the superior identity of Protestants was also a way of preventing poor working class Protestants from uniting with their Catholic counterparts and forming a meaningful labour movement. Of course, such a Labour Party would be a threat to the Unionist Party come election time. Well, this is how they avoided it. They found the best means for doing this was the Orange Order, which became a key part of Protestants' cultural identity. The Orange Order had a huge influence on Northern Ireland society and culture. Now, in the eyes of nationalists, they were an anti Catholic group, and they found their marches, their huge drums, and unionist triumphalism repugnant. And of course, the Orange Order practice of nearly going out of its way to march through Catholic areas to show their dominance, that never went down well and actually created a lot of tension and trouble during the marching season, especially within Catholic communities. How big an impact did the Orange Order have on Northern society? It was huge. Craig and all but one of his ministers were Orangemen. In 1934, James Craig said, "I have always said that I am an Orangeman first and a politician second." We also see their influence in policing. The RUC, unlike its predecessors, the RIC, the Royal Irish Constabulary, permitted its members to be Orangemen. The B Specials, the backup police force, the highly unpopular backup police force that was loaded by Catholics, was also exclusively manned by Orangemen. Now, here's something I also want you to take note of. The Orange Order was also a unifying force for Protestants. Now, you might ask yourself, why is the unity the Orange Order brings to Protestants so important? Well, I'm going to ask you a question. What is the biggest, today, what is the biggest religion in Northern Ireland? Have a think about it. Now, the answer you might give, or you've probably given, is Protestantism. That's the biggest religion. Um, have a closer look, though, at this. This might surprise you. Now, this is based on the 2011 census. And when people in Northern Ireland were asked about their religious affiliation, in other words, what is their religion, uh, look what was the most popular religion in Northern Ireland. It was Roman Catholicism. Over 40% of Northern Irish citizens said they were Roman Catholic. Now, after that, you look at the other religious denominations. You have Presbyterians, Anglicans, Methodists, and it goes on. So, when it comes down to it, Catholics are actually the biggest religion. Now, of course, they're not the majority religion. And I suppose that's where the Orange Order is important. Because it acts as an umbrella organisation. Now, that's maybe a new term too, but an umbrella organisation is something that gathers people together, right? Again, if it's raining, you gather under an umbrella. So the Orange Order is an umbrella organisation that unites all types of Protestants. So you might have different types of Protestants, Church of Ireland, Presbyterian, Methodists, but when it comes down to it, they can all say we're all Orange men. We're all members of the Orange Order. Therefore, it and its activities are vital to the cultural identity of Northern Protestants. Plus, another area where the Orange Order was very successful is where it is able to unify both wealthy and poor Protestants. You know, so it really does bind the Protestant community together in the north, um, which is amazing. Now, when the shoe was on the other foot, what was it like for Catholics trying to express their identity? Well, when it came to marches by the Ancient Order of Hibernian and maybe Republican commemorations, these were often banned. It was the same with the GAA. The Stormont government was very hostile to it and often considered it the IRA at play. Therefore, GAA members were often subject to random searches and police harassment. Some were interned, imprisoned in the early 1920s for no other reason other than that they were members of GAA clubs. Plus, for many decades, there was a lack of GAA coverage in the northern press and media. So, all these combined meant it would take till 1960 before a team from the six counties from Northern Ireland would win. Sam Maguire would win an All Ireland title, and that team was down in 1960 when they defeated Kerry. Now, when we looked at education in the South, we saw the role it played in cultural identity and trying to promote an Irish identity based around the Irish language. Let's have a look at the role of education in the North now. Now, you're looking here at the North's First Minister for Education, Lord Londonderry, who was a liberal unionist. Now, when I say liberal, Lord Londonderry was into the concept of, I suppose, what we call today educate together. This idea of, I suppose, in the North case, Catholics and Protestants going to the same schools. So he tried to introduce non denominational education. In other words, let's get Catholic and Protestant children to sit together in the same classrooms and learn together. But it didn't happen. It never was. Why? Both Catholic and Protestant church leaders were totally against it. And today, nothing really has changed when you think that less than 10% of children in Northern Ireland go to mixed schools. Now, the results of this are not good. Firstly, denominational education became the norm in the North. So you have Catholic schools and you have Protestant schools. Secondly, you get a separate education and curriculum in both systems. And this will lead to two separate identities and even greater divisions between the two communities for generations to come, and even still today. Now, the Irish language. So we looked at the many, many efforts made by Cumann O'Neill and Fianna Fáil in the South to promote the Irish language. Um, Now, in the North, learning Irish was not compulsory in schools. However, the language and Irish history were taught in Catholic schools. Now, in the South, we saw lots of support and measures introduced by the Southern government to promote the Irish language. Now, in the long run, they weren't very successful, but they still tried. In the North, the Northern Ireland government refused to support the language as it was associated with Irish republicanism. Now, today it is still an issue. Again, if you follow the news and what's been happening in the north, I suppose up to recently, um, the power sharing assembly has only just been set up and is running again. And one of the reasons it fell apart was because unionists would not agree to an Irish Language Act. And again, actually, that is still up in the air whether the Irish language would be given some sort of special treatment or status in the north. So the Irish language, it's still a very divisive issue in the north. Okay, even to this day. Now, again, this is something we touched on in the previous presentation on the Eucharistic Congress. But again, I want to emphasize the North's view of the Eucharistic Congress. I suppose when I say the North, I mean Unionists and Protestants' view of the Eucharistic Congress. Now, in the South, it had been a unifying force, and some have argued it actually helped heal some of our country's Civil War divisions. Um, However, in the North, Protestants had a very different view of the Eucharistic Congress. It confirmed for many of them the old view that home rule was Rome rule and that the South was subservient to the Pope in Rome. So the Eucharistic Congress further emphasized differences between Catholics and Protestants, therefore strengthening partition between North and South. So as we've seen, or I hope we've seen, and you understand now, two very separate cultural identities developed in the North. And what does this create? Well, in the North, it creates a lot of conflict, a lot of tension, and at times violent division, which simmered for years. Eventually, it would lead to the outbreak of the Troubles in the 1960s, in which thousands will die. And I suppose any of you that also study the Northern Ireland course fully understand what that entails. All right. So, guys, again, thanks for watching. I hope the video was helpful. Again, as I've said, on this video, I suppose the cultural identity question is extremely popular. The northern aspect, right? The sort of question where they ask you to compare north and south hasn't come up for a long time. So it is worth having a look at. And I suppose I hope this video will help you in that regard. All right, lads. Till next time, keep safe, keep well, keep the study up, and we'll talk again. All right, bye bye.